Top bidder.
Top bidder, got it.
Followed wherever. He's giving me a hard time, but I think that's what you told me.
Leon, except given half a choice, we'd be moving that way.
Or out that way.
All right. Okay, calling the.
Present.
Mr. Barnes. Okay. Ms. Cantor?
Here.
Ms. Casperson?
Here.
Mr. Davidoff?
Here.
Mr. Dodge?
Here.
Ms. Hall is absent. Ms. Kerrigan?
Here.
Mr. Winograd? And Mr. Williams.
Here.
It's a little fussy today. Thank you very much, Ms. LeBreau. I just want to wish everybody a happy International Women's Day. I don't know if you know what that is, but there are a couple of us wearing red up here. And this actually was recognized, it actually started in 1908, as unrest and a critical debate was occurring among women, and they marched through New York City to receive actually better hours. It was really job-related and labor-related at the time. And then in the 1970s, it became an international day of movement throughout the world. And today, one of the there are some quotes that I just wanted to, Malala said, "We cannot all succeed when half of us are held back." And one of the things that I got a kick out of, this was from Margaret Thatcher, actually. In politics, if you want anything said, ask a man. If you want anything done, ask a woman. So we'll leave it at that. There's more, but we'll leave it at that. Seeing that, anyway. All right, thank you very much. We are at number 4, Mr. Davidoff.
There's no minutes to approve, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Number 5, public forum. I don't think we can do that because the subject is the budget, and that is we're going to be telling you when our public hearings are for that. And no consideration, no consent calendar, and no unfinished business. Number 8, Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item number 8 is introduction of the 2017-2018 fiscal year budget as proposed by the Town Manager and Superintendent of Schools. I move that we receive and set for public hearing on March 27th, 2017 at 6 p.m. and April 5th, 2017 at 2 p.m. in the Legislative Chamber.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Van Winkle, we're going to approve that you present, but I just want to say thank you for coming. We have people from the Board of Education here. We have the Superintendent of Schools here, Rick Ledwith from our Employee Benefits. We have our fire, Carrie from Fire. We have our Human and Leisure Services Department Director. I'm not sure who else is here from the town. Helen, we out? Yep, Joe Dacre's assessor. I have some heads in, so I can't see her. But, and our of course, CFO, Peter Privatera, and I think there was somebody else from and then we have your department, a couple of people from your department here too. So are you going to be presenting, or Mr. Van Winkle? You're starting with Mr. Van Winkle. Okay, thank you all for coming, and much more to follow.
So let me just start. I'm going to ask Peter Privatera, CFO. He's going to do the presentation on the budget. This is my last budget. It's probably the most difficult budget we've had in decades. You're going to see a budget tonight that has a substantial tax increase driven primarily by changes that the state of Connecticut is considering in the revenues that they provide to communities for education, and shifting some of the costs that they have carried for many years to municipalities. West Hartford was affected by these changes more than most communities. So although it's not a budget I wanted to bring to you tonight, we had expectations of bringing you a much more modest budget. Unfortunately, tonight we're bringing what's going to be a very difficult budget for us to work through, to find a way to make the cost of this budget manageable for our community. Mr. Privatera is going to come up and start our presentation. It's unusual. You know, we've gone through difficult budgets in the past, mostly generated by recessions, bad economic times, people losing their jobs, the economy slowing down rapidly. That happened in 2008, it happened in 2000, it happened in the early 90s. We're today sitting in an economy that is growing slowly but in good shape. Unemployment is low. Most of our residents are looking at secure employment, and having the foreclosure of homes is back to what we would call a normal rate in the economy. So here we are looking at a budget that we might have expected to see in a very bad recession, a very, very bad recession, and yet in a time where the economy is in reasonably good shape, we're having to look at substantial tax increases and cuts to our budget. So, Peter? Yes? You can't get we're going to work on the technology here. Yeah. Blame it on the board. There you go. And last night, the superintendent presented his budget to the Board of Education. He had a room full of employees, of parents, of citizens that wanted to hear about the impact of the changes on our school budget. So we have a smaller group tonight, but I'm certain we're going to see more turnout as we move forward. Oh, keep talking. So a man walks into a bar. Yeah. So in our budget, we're gonna see a presentation in a moment. But we're, like the superintendent's budget last night, there is a long list of potential reductions and cost shifts, if you will, in our budget that we are going to be talking about in our committee structure as we walk through the budget. We're going to be looking at the number of employees we have in those budgets, the services we provide in those budgets, and we're going to try to see whether there are ways in which we can reduce our staff substantially impacting the services that people expect from this community. So this is going to be a different experience for all of you, even if you've been on the town council for a long time. Generally, those discussions at committee levels focus on the budget itself and not some change in direction or policy of the town. And like the superintendent with his budget, we're going to be looking at changes that unfortunately, in a good time, I couldn't recommend, but changes that we may have to look at today if we go forward. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Don't you love technology?
What happened to the man that went to the bar?
Yeah. The projectors are... No, I'm sorry, yeah.
Not coming through. All right. We were here this afternoon practicing. It worked great. Yeah. Fine. Okay. All right, let's see what happens here. Where's Jared from here? Huh? Come and unplug it?
I'm going to give it 1 minute, and then I'm going to try it again.
Okay. Don't touch anything. Don't touch anything. Okay, I just wanted to point out that this budget that the town manager is presenting tonight on the town side and predominantly on the board side is we refer to as a current services budget. There's no new programming in here. There's no new positions in here. Everything that's in the budget is either legally mandated, contractually required, or necessary for the existing employees to do their jobs. So basically, you know, it's either a roll-forward budget or a current services budget, but it's just basically what the town needs to operate moving forward. The town manager, incorporating the superintendent's budget, is proposing a $287.3 million general fund budget. The town manager proposes the town portion and the capital portion, and the superintendent submits the education portion. You can see that the largest piece of the pie here is education at $166.2 million, or 58% of the overall general fund budget, followed by the town at $103.7 million, or 36%, and then finally capital, our bonding, our debt, at $17.4 million, or 6%. When we look at the budget, there are really two components. There's an expenditure component and a revenue component, and a non-tax revenue component. Basically, if we look at the budget, the expense side of the budget is going to go up $19 million. The non-tax revenue is going to drop by $6.4 million. So the total budgetary impact is $25.4 million. And later on in the presentation, I'll give you the specifics on both categories. But year over year, it's an expenditure increase of 7.1%, a non-tax revenue decrease of 16.4%, and a total property tax increase of 11.1%. Now, meaning we need to raise $25.4 million more than we did this year. And I'll be explaining the impacts on various categories of property and what this means to an average homeowner or a commercial building owner. Now we'll talk about the expense side of the budget. As you can see here, the largest piece of the budget is education at $12.9 million. That's roughly an 8.4% increase over the prior year. On the town side, an increase of roughly $4.8 million, or 4.8% increase over the current year. And on the capital side, an 8.1% increase, or $1.3 million. Now, this is what makes up the $19 million of the expense side of the budget. Now, I just want to briefly talk about education. I know the superintendent gave a presentation last night, but I just want to highlight some important parts here. The superintendent proposed an increase of $12.9 million, and there are three components in his proposal that are a direct reflection of the governor's proposed budget. The first one is he had to add the teacher's pension payment of roughly $8 million. The second is the loss of excess cost reimbursement. Prior to this, excess cost reimbursement, that was a component of their budget. They were reimbursed on certain types of special ed costs that exceeded certain criteria, and that's gone, so they're going to have to fund that themselves. And now there's a new grant called Special Education Grant, which I believe was part of ECS in the past, but now it's a direct grant directly to the Board of Education that does not come into the general fund. So the impact on the education budget on the governor's action was an increase in expenditures of about $5.8 million. And that added with an operating increase of all of their regular operating expenses, salary increases, health benefit increases, and such, of $7.1 million. That's what gets you to the $12.9 million of education increase. Now, I want to talk about how the governor's budget proposal impacts the town. And when we present the budget, our analysis is usually made against the adopted budget. So we have an adopted budget, in the town manager's proposed budget, and our analysis shows what difference from a year to year, one over the other. Now, you can see in the top area from town fiscal year 2017 adopted budget, you can see when you add all those categories, the net change is only $11.7 million. Now, special ed grant, excess cost reimbursement, and teachers' retirement contribution, those are all part of an expense budget and the superintendent's budget. The ECS grant is a revenue to the general fund. We take that into the general fund like we do all other general fund revenue. It does not go to the Board of Education. But when we adopted our budget in the current year, we made an assumption that we were going to receive $18.3 million of special education grant revenue. When the state adopted their budget, they ended up adopting a little under $3 million more for us in special education. And you can see that on the $8.6 million you have in the estimated budget. So all things being equal, right now, if someone says to you, well, what's the impact of the governor's budget against what you currently have in your estimate, it's roughly $14.5 million. But if we compared it against our adopted budget, it's slightly less than that, because in our adopted budget, again, we didn't take into consideration the roughly $2.7 million of additional ECS money that we have. And there's been some confusion on that, but I just wanted to clear it up and explain it as best I could. And you can see when someone says it's 14.5 million, you can understand where that came from. Now, on the town side, I want to go through the primary drivers that impact the budget. And again, it's a current services budget with a $4.8 million increase. Wages and salaries, this reflects all the wages that we're estimating for all the employees, with the exception of police officers. Right now, the police officer's contract is unsettled. Excuse me, the contract has been unsettled since 2013, but we made an assumption on all the other bargaining units. The fire union, and there's one union in the Public Works Department, streets. Those contracts are slated to expire on June 30th of 2018. The remaining 7 units are slated to expire June 30th of 17. So we're making an assumption in the operating budget on wage increases for all employees, some that are contractually required, some that will be negotiated, but we're making the assumption here. The only assumption we're not making here is for the police department. And if you can go to the bottom of the list and see contingency, that $284,000, that's the assumption we're making for police officers. We're putting that in a contingency as a potential wage settlement. The software and maintenance contracts, we purchased a new financial management system, and next year is a first full year in operation. We went live this year, so we have to reflect about $128,000, I believe, of software maintenance related to that. There's about $48,000 of software maintenance related to Microsoft. We have a significant number of devices that have Microsoft products on them, from tablets to laptops to any other device. And it was brought to our attention that our estimate, we underestimated in the number of devices we had, so we have to basically cover the licensing or the software agreements on all those devices, and that was about $48,000. And then there's another component, the software maintenance contracts, that relate to the paramedic program. We purchased some new equipment, some new software, and the paramedic program went into effect in August of this year, and next year we're going to be paying the full software maintenance contract on that as well. On the utility side, electricity, right now we're paying 8.1 cents per kilowatt hour on generation and distribution. That will stay in effect until December of 17. When that expires, we've signed a new contract for the following 2 years. It'll drop our cost for electricity by ½ cent. Natural gas, we don't have a contract in place. We float prices. We purchase our natural gas through CNG, and we're expecting a 4% increase. And water, we're expecting a 5% increase, not only because the MDC has increased their pricing, but we used a lot of water last year because of the drought situation. And what we do is we have a utility services fund, And we basically, anytime we have a savings or a savings or a deficit, we amortize that over a number of years. So basically, the utilities is some gains and some losses, but amortized over that period of time. The MDC, the regular MDC, I should say, the ad valorem, is going up $618,000 or 6.9%. Normally, we push back hard during budget time, and we tried to address this as the MDC was developing their budget, but we kind of got sidetracked with the MDC reserve payment issue that's on the bottom of this slide, and I'll talk about that in a minute. A pension contribution, our pension contributions overall are going up by a little over $1 million. The town side is roughly 75% of that, the town and town funds, and 25% is for the Board of Education non-teacher certified staff. The town health program, fortunately, we're doing very well. I know the superintendent in his budget had expressed some concerns about their high costs associated with healthcare, but on both our active and retiree health, we're projecting a savings this year. And again, rather than taking it all in 1 year, we amortize that savings over 5 years. That's why we're only seeing a $105,000 increase. The workers' compensation program, we're not seeing an increased number of claims. What we're seeing is an increase in severity of claims. Every year, in general, the cost of healthcare goes up about 6%. But what we're seeing now is more of the workers' comp claims require hospitalization and surgery. And that's one of the reasons why that's going up. A contingency we discussed, we're basically setting that aside for a police potential settlement. And the MDC reserve payment. The MDC reserve payment was added to our ad valorem tax by the MDC when a discussion took place about the possibility of the City of Hartford defaulting on 2 of their payments to the MDC. The MDC came up with a calculation and basically said to the town of West Hartford, okay, if the City of Hartford defaults, you're going to have to pay us $1.78 million. Now, we did not include this $1.78 million as part of our current year tax calculation. Our plan was to generate current year surplus this year and use that surplus as an offset should we have to pay this, along with a balance that we have in another account called a tax overpayments account. So we do show this as an expense side, but on the revenue side of the budget, we're not showing that it's going to be financed by tax dollars. Okay, let's talk about revenues. I just want to point out here that you can see that the predominant revenue source is property taxes. However, there is a component of intergovernmental, almost 7%. So obviously, when the governor comes out with a budget that affects us, you can see that 7% of our revenues that we're taking in are intergovernmental, and it will affect us. But just wanted to point out that overall, the predominant portion is property taxes. I want to talk about non-tax revenue now. I mentioned before that year over year, the expenses are going to go up $19 million. Now, the non-tax revenue is all other categories. Other property taxes up $50,000. Those are basically prior year taxes that we collect and liens and interest on those prior year taxes. Intergovernmental revenue. That drop of roughly $3 million is a result of a loss of ECS revenue, the loss of a municipal revenue sharing grant. That grant alone was over $800,000. The loss of some other state grants, and we did not include roughly $190,000 of federal grants because we haven't received them yet. We usually receive them during the course of the year, but our budgeting convention is don't include them because we're not sure we're going to get them. So intergovernmental in those categories is down about $7.3 million. Charges for services, those are all other revenue categories, from building and permits to other categories. And Basically, when we look at them and we make minor adjustments, the net of it is just a minor reduction of roughly $29,000. Now, miscellaneous revenue. This $1.3 million, there's two components here. There's roughly $1.77 million that we added for the MDC reserve tax, but in the current year, we used $435,000 of tax overpayments to mitigate the tax increase in the current year. That $435,000 is not in the town manager's proposed budget for next year. Okay, that's why you only see 1.3 million. Should the city of Hartford default and we have to pay that, we will look to this 1.3 million, and we have a balance in the tax overpayment accounts that we can appropriate to make up the difference so we can pay that 1.77 million. And finally, transfers from other funds. It's been our practice to use LoCIP, local capital improvement funds, to take it into the general fund and use it to offset expenses associated with capital improvement projects that we have in terms of salaries and benefits of our employees who work on those projects. But we were notified by the state that we can no longer take that in as a general fund revenue. So that's why you see that deduct. That's not to say that we're losing it, but it's going to go into the capital fund instead of the general fund. So when you look at all those revenue adjustments, you have a net loss of roughly $6.4 million. When you add that loss to the increase of budgeted expenditures, you're looking at a tax increase of the $25.4 million that we spoke of. Now, what's the implication of this? Now, when we look at the grand list, the assessor completed a revaluation that basically is going to hit next year's budget. We look at the 2015 grand list of roughly $5.9 billion, and then we look at the growth. Now, real property growth, when we look at that, $247 million, roughly $47 million of that are new properties, new value that have come on, not existing value, but new value that have come on. The Del Mar Hotel, some apartments, some condos. So that $47 million is included. But the bulk of it is basically increased values from commercial properties. Residential valuations are up slightly over 1%. But the biggest growth is commercial apartments up 35%, mixed-use commercial properties up 23%, industrial condos up 32%. So you can see that the bulk of that real property growth is on the commercial side. On the motor vehicle growth, I was surprised to learn that we have 47,000 registered vehicles in town. That's a lot of vehicles, Joe. And the number increased by 607 vehicles for next year. So that's reflected in that growth of $6.8 million. On personal property growth, we have 2,373 commercial properties in town. We lost 3 from the previous year, but there's personal property growth here, and that's because the existing commercial owners basically are reinvesting in their property, their plant and their equipment, and the value of the reinvestment is outpacing the depreciation value of the existing equipment. So that's a positive impact as well. So that brings us to the new grand list of $6.2 billion, an increase of $259 million or 4.3%. And the proposed mill rate is 42.76 mills, which would generate an additional $11 million of revenue. Now, what does that mean for an existing homeowner, an existing taxpayer? Well, if you look at the $25.4 million, it's 11.1% tax increase. But if you apply the grand list growth to it, that drops it down by roughly $1.9 million. So for an existing taxpayer, that 11.1% would drop to about 10.3%. Now, I'm going to go through the impact of different types of property, but that's just a tax increase Okay? That's what we need to generate in additional taxes. Now, this is an example of what would happen to a single-family homeowner. Now, the average single-family home is assessed at $224,000. Now, if we apply the new mill rate, the 42.76 mils, which is an increase of 3.25 mils, the taxes on that home will go up by $728. Now, if that homeowner has two average vehicles, when we adopted our budget with 32 mils for motor vehicles per state legislation. When the state finally adopted their budget, they said, well, no, West Hartford, you have to increase your motor vehicle mill rate to 37 mils. Well, next year's budget, that's going back down to 32 mils. So what you'll see is a decrease in your taxes for your vehicles. So when we apply the increase of the property tax, and then we offset the decrease of the two motor vehicles, an average homeowner will pay about $638 in taxes, or 6.7%, based on this budget proposal. Now, when we look on the impact of commercial properties, we see something a little different. On the commercial side, there's two factors that we need to consider. One is the mill rate's going up 3.25%. The second is the value of commercial properties is going up on average of about 20%. So when we look at an average commercial property with a value of $1.75 million, without revaluation, it would go up about 8%, 8.2%. But when we assume that the value of that property has increased 20% to $350,000, now there's two factors here. There's the increase in the mill rate, and there's a 20% increase in the value of the property. And that tax would go up by $20,653, or roughly a 29.9% increase. Now, this will demonstrate what would have happened if there was no change in the state funding or the teacher's pension payment. Basically, if we took the superintendent's operating increase of $7.1 million and added it, and we assumed that we were going to be held harmless on state aid, that we didn't lose anything, what would that have done? For that average single-family home that I was talking about, because of a lower mill rate increase, it would require slightly under a 1 mil increase. That property tax would go up by $218. But again, then we have the offset of the two vehicles there. So total taxes for an average homeowner would have been $128, or about 1.3% increase. Now, excuse me, if we look at the same situation on a commercial property, again, we're looking at less than a 1 mil tax increase, but with the drop in the mill rate to 40.48 mils, we're still seeing an increase in the value of the property because of reval, but the increase isn't as significant. With reval, I believe it was a 29.9% increase. Without reval, it's a 22.9% increase. I just want to talk about the capital improvement program that was submitted by the town manager. There's two components. There's capital non-recurring, and then there's long-term debt. Capital non-recurring are basically capital items and equipment that we purchase that we don't bond for, that we pay for out of general fund money. When the budget was adopted last year, the second year of the budget approved for next year, $1,053,000 for CNRE, we call it, capital non-recurring expenses. The town manager in his budget proposal reduced that by $425,000, again, in an effort to mitigate any increase associated with this budget. He adjusted a variety of areas: communications equipment, pools, playgrounds, furniture and equipment, some traffic systems. But the point was that to get it down so it would mitigate any tax increase associated with this budget submission. On the bonding side, We initially had $4 million for the Yukon purchase in here, and that's not in here now. We made some other adjustments related to the new public safety radio system. We reduced that because we negotiated a better contract for the town. But we cut some rolling stock, some school building improvement money, some town building improvement money, some energy conservation money, and some neighborhood street reconstruction, only to get that debt down because the following year we didn't want to see a large spike in debt service. And the other significant adjustment that was made here was $3 million of bonds for the Hall High science labs. We don't need to bond for that anymore because we were fortunate enough to get grant money for that. So how do we fund this? Again, the increase to the debt service is roughly $1.3 million, and for council members, we did apply $350,000 of bond premium to get to this number. The CNRE transfer, the $628,000, we are not using general fund money for that. We are using a fund balance in the CNRE fund. We have a capital non-recurring fund, so it's not going to impact the general fund. So what does this all mean? In the first 2 years of the plan, you'll see some spikes up there. You'll see some looks like big numbers, but if you look at the blue number, the blue column, that represents next year, 2018. And if you look at transportation, which is significant with $8.3 million, well, that's comprised of $4 million of our regular street programs, our arterial street, our neighborhood street, resurfacing, reconstruction programs. There's $1.7 million in there for the Main Street Bridge project. There's $1.3 million in there for the Park Road interchange project, and there's $700,000 in there for the storm water management project, some of which there will be an offset on in grants. On the school side, that includes $6.4 million for the Hall Science Labs and $1.5 million for exterior building improvements for the schools. Everything below that are recurring expenses that we have. Now, if you look at the orange bars, transportation, schools, parks and rec, town building, that represents what we would normally spend. Basically, there are no one-time major projects in there. That would fund annual projects that we have in streets and school upkeep. But if you look at the far right under miscellaneous, that $5.3 million increase, well, that's an outlier because what we have there is we have $2.5 million for a project for modernization of the Brixton Street facility for a potential recycling site. And we have $1.2 million in that number for the purchase of a new piece of fire apparatus. So if we look at the funding side of it, if we look at the orange, which is bond funding, we issue bonds for that and we pay back the principal and interest. In 2018, we're not really looking at anything significant. Those represent our regular projects that we would have. If you look at the CNRE, the $8,365,000, well, that includes North Main Street. I'm sorry, that includes a number of projects. If you look at the bar, the $15.6 million, that includes Brixton Street recycling and the fire truck. The bottom line is that there's nothing really significant other than those major projects that I discussed. And again, I just want to go back to the $8.3 million. Those are grant funds. That's where we have the $5.6 million of grant funds for the Hall Science Labs, and we have grant funds for North Main Street, and we have grant funds for the Park Road interchange in that number. So all in all, there are some one-time projects in these estimates, but we're predominantly getting refunded through grant money on the major projects. So that represents the highlights of the town manager's budget proposal. Again, I just want to stress that it's a current services budget. Other than the payment for the MDC reserve payment, there's really nothing out of the ordinary here.
Thank you, Peter. Anything else, Ron? Do you want to?
I would just emphasize that in our budget document, there is a page that lists a series of cuts and changes that we'll be talking about in committee. We're also going to be talking about whether the items we've suggested you fund, whether they need to be funded, whether it's capital or general fund. We're going to look at each project, each department, and take a look at how we're spending those dollars, and if there's a way to reduce that spending to get the tax increase down. Again, this is the largest increase in property taxes. I've been here 30 years, in the 30-year history that I've been here, by far. So we have a significant problem to deal with to continue to make our community affordable and provide the services to our community that we know that they value in this community. So both the school board and the town council have their work cut out for them. And it's unusual this year, again, that we have to wrestle with such a external impact on West Hartford's budget. We appreciate the fact that the governor for many years kept the municipalities out of the cuts that the state went through, but this extremely large cut in a single year is makes it a very difficult budget this year. So I'm sure we're going to hear a lot from your citizens once they think about what we just said, but there's more to come.
Thank you. We are going to have a lot of time to go through this. I just want to thank Barbara Rua and Elizabeth Hewitt. I know they had a lot to do with giving us these documents and a lot of input into your presentation. So, and we're going to be spending a lot more time together to go through everything. It is a really, this is again, this is one of the most difficult, this is the most difficult financially challenging budget that we've been presented on, things that have not happened, not been created by us or by the nature, let's say, external forces of the economy. You know, even in 2008, first of all, we did have a safety net, but there was not, there was just not the dramatic, sudden notice of this. Partly the frustration is that all of this is happening at a time when we have very, very little time to figure out how to manage through this. And one of our benefits of West Hartford is we put our heads together, we figure a way how we're going to make a plan and get through a difficult time. In 2008, we combed through our capital improvement budget. We cut $25 million in projects. We asked our unions for freezes. We all chipped in and helped. With 6 weeks till budget adoption, there's not much time to really do a lot of that work. We're going to do the best we can and make some assumptions. We also have word that this will not pass as is, the governor's budget. We don't think that's the case. We'll work with our legislators. We will work with other mayors and town managers in other areas to find out what their assumptions are and how they are handling some of the unknowns. And again, I think it's a tsunami of things, and I would appreciate if people focused on what we have done and the 1.5 increase that would have happened, and that would be lower after this budget process, and hopefully it would have been a zero. And that was really what I thought we were going to be dealing with this year. But the difficulties with Hartford's financial condition, the difficulties with the state's financial condition, and those wrapped up in a sort of a one-year fix or righting the ship in 1 year is a extremely difficult task. So I really want to hear from the public. We need to know what you think, what your concerns are, what your input is. If anyone has a lottery ticket that they want to donate, that would be great. No, we're going to really try to make the best decisions we can to keep West Hartford true to their pillar of values of safety, schools, and services. We know we're going to have to make some changes that are going to be painful, but we're going to try to remain as true to those factors and pillars that we have in the past and do the best we can to make this as palatable to our community as possible and have them understand the challenges that we face. So, yes, Mr. Van Winkle.
I don't know if you want me to mention some of the meetings that are set up.
Yes.
You know, originally, we had talked about a meeting on the 13th of March, the town hall kind of a meeting. We're going to cancel that one. We're doing a joint meeting with the board on the 23rd of March. That'll be at Charter Oak School from, I'm sorry, from 6 to 8 p.m. So again, the 23rd of the month, a joint meeting with the Board of Education, perhaps a listening kind of meeting where we can hear from the community about what their values are, what their concerns are. The council is also scheduling a public hearing on our budget on the 27th of March at 6 p.m. and a budget hearing, I'm sorry, the 29th? Oh, no, it's not right. Yeah, April. Oop. A budget hearing on April 5th at 2 in the afternoon. The council itself has lots of meetings that they do early morning, late evenings in committee format that will be walking through each individual department budget and looking at the costs and where we can make some adjustments. So we're going to keep you busy the month of March. We're going to keep you busy most of the month of April. And as we get to budget adoption on April 25th, we're going to have to make some decision about what is the state going to do? What is the final thing that we think we'll see from the state, which if history bears itself as it has in the past, the legislature may not have made that decision by the date we adopt our budget. So we'll see, but we're going to be making some difficult decisions and some perhaps decisions that we're really not going to be sure of whether we're going to see less or more money. We recognize the state has a significant problem. How they find a balance to this problem is yet to come, and we've heard over and over again from our legislators and others that it will change. We just don't know how it's going to change and how that will affect us.
And there was a bill that was introduced today to extend the adoption date to June 30th, a permissive option, not a mandatory option. And I understand from my local Capitol resident that was upheld in the it was held up in the Senate. So we don't know whether that's going to pass. We would like to have another week because appropriations adopts 4/27, and then the revenue numbers come in a little bit later this year, of course. Everything seems to be a little more complicated, April 18th, and they will have numbers, I think, coming out about the 5th of April. So, I mean, of May, sorry. So even a week and a half or 2 weeks would give us more knowledge of how we could, and still not definite, but a little bit more guidance. But so I don't know if that's going to be an option.
You know, one of the things Peter and myself have talked about is that delaying the adoption of the budget has an impact. And if we delay long, we'll end up with cash flow problems in August, let me say. So we need to spend some time looking at that and seeing what that maximum delay we could have in adopting our budget and not affect our cash flow. There's always an option that we could, in the summer, issue short-term revenue anticipation notes, borrow money to pay for our current costs in order to hold off on that decision. But again, it would cost us to borrow that money. So we're going to try to do our best to avoid that decision, but we're going to come back to you with some dates where we think you really do need to adopt by this point. So there'll be more to come. And so right now it's the 25th of April that we have to adopt. If they pass that legislation, it allows us to override our charter, and potentially we may be adopting a little later than that.
Okay. Thank you. Again, much more to follow. West Hartford has been unique because of the participation of its residents, and I think very professional leadership, both on the school side and on the town side, and a very committed, I think, electoral body from history from years ago, and you have a very engaged body now. We're going to try to do our best. I request that everybody communicate with us. We will read every email, we will take every call. Just try to be respectful of the challenges that we are facing, if it takes us a little while to get back to you. But we take this seriously. We're going to do our best to get through this and bring West Hartford as strong at the end of it. Hopefully, everybody understanding about the choices we made. So, all right, I think we can move on. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it, Mr. Privatera. Okay. Number 10 is announcements. I am going to start. Unfortunately, again, we've had another scare at the JCC. There was an email bomb scare today, and it was handled in the most professional way by our own, by the staff of the JCC, as well as our own safety. Our own professionals in public safety, and we want to thank them. This has been 3 scares in the last month. One at the Hebrew High School and 2 at the JCC, and it is not. It's a terrible place to be when you are walking into a building and you just don't know when the alarm's going to ring. And the staff there has been as strong and positive as possible. David Jacobs, thank you for your leadership, and again, I just can't condone those kind of actions enough. It's shameful. Okay. And condone. Oh, I said condemn. Sorry about that. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I can't. Yeah. Sorry. As far as other announcements, I think we just have, we're going to be completely focused on the budget. So other than that, just if you see us around, say hi and lend us a hand. There is a meeting tomorrow. We have our legislative liaison meeting tomorrow that is at Charter Oak also, and it starts at 7.
Yes, it's, the legislators are holding their meeting, not our
That's right.
legislative liaison,
We also
which is a
have
meeting
another.
between the council and
That's
our
right.
legislators are holding a meeting at Charter Oak School tomorrow at 7.
Right, and they have invited the council to be there. I don't know if board members are going to be there as well, but we will be listening to them, and I'm sure they will take some input from the public. Thank you for that. Yes, Ben?
Thank you, Mayor. Just unfortunately appropriate to your announcement about the notice on the JCC, where my announcement relates, and that we're reminded of Haman's coming back, no matter how often they're defeated. So happy to announce that Congregation Beth Israel will be holding its Purim Spiel on this Sunday at 10:30. It is open to the public. It is based on the songs by Carole King from the hit Broadway musical Beautiful. The play, the Spiel is called Dutiful. And is, again, free and open to the public. Hope everybody can attend. Followed by a really great Purim Carnival that's held every year. That's also free. So hopefully we can have a little celebration and in spirit fight back against these hateful acts. Again, it's 10:30 in the morning on Sunday, followed immediately by the carnival, probably about an hour later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winograd. Anybody else? Ms. Casperson, no? I know on Saturday there is a wonderful program at Vaxon Library, One Book, One Town. There was a refugee, we announced at last meeting, so it's an inspiration. It should be an inspirational program. Okay, Miss number 11, reports from Corporation Council.
I have no formal report. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Allaire? No? Okay. Number 12, appointments. I am going to move, we have a correction for Christopher Cyrek, appointed 1/24/2017 to MDC, should be the term ending should be 12/31/2022. The following appointments to the newly formed Clean Energy Commission, which replaces the Clean Energy Task Force. Appoint Catherine Devaney as Staff Commission Member to the Clean Energy Commission. Appoint Bernard Pelletier to the Clean Energy Commission for a term ending 12/31/2019. Max Dubuisson to the Clean Energy Commission for term ending 12/31/2019. Joseph Campanella, also term ending 12/31/2022. Christopher Nelson, term ending 20/31/2022. Robert Palmer as an alternative staff commission member to the Clean Energy Commission, and David Mello as an alternative to the Clean Energy Commission for a term ending 12/3/2019.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Then we have no reports from standing committees. We have no consent calendar. Communications, I think we're all set. And number 16, Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we receive a notice of the town planner's intention to approve pursuant to Section 17744C9, a request on behalf of Delamar West Hartford LLC for an amendment to Special Development District 140 located at 1 Memorial Road, formerly known as 90 Raymond Road. The request is for minor architectural modifications to elements of the facade, the main entrance canopy, and the pergola, and minor adjustments to exterior hardscape and landscape elements primarily related to the restaurant outdoor dining area.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We have no petitions and no executive session. I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Good night.